My name is Rachel Hamilton. I'm 41. And the last time my family saw me, I was being dragged out of my childhood home in handcuffs, framed by my own sister for embezzlement, while my parents watched in horror from the front porch. That was 8 years ago. 8 years since Emma destroyed my life, with forged documents and a carefully crafted lie that cost me my job at the bank, my reputation, and the very relationship I'd built. 8 years since my mother looked me in the eye and said, "I always knew you'd amount to nothing, Rachel. Just like your father predicted." What they didn't know, what they couldn't have imagined, was that getting fired from that small-town bank was the best thing that ever happened to me. While they thought I was rotting away in shame somewhere, I was actually 200 miles south at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Lincoln, Georgia, earning my way into thesis marshal service. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same attention to detail that made me good at catching banking discrepancies made me exceptional at tracking fugitives. The same stubborn persistence my family had always mocked became my greatest asset in federal investigations. While Emma was living in the house that had been mine, spending money she had stolen from our parents' trust, I was learning to hunt people who thought they were untouchable. I specialized in financial crimes and fugitive apprehension. By my 3rd year, I was leading task forces. By my 5th, I was training other marshals. By my 7th, I had clearance levels that would make most people's heads spin. But me family didn't know any of this. They thought Rachel Hamilton had obscurity, probably dead or in prison somewhere. Emma made sure of that, telling everyone who asked that I was too ashamed to show my face, and that had probably changed my name and moved across the country. She was half right. I did change something, but it wasn't my name. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. My supervisor, Deputy Chief Marshal Thompson, knocked on my office door with an expression I'd learned to read over the years. "We had a big one, Hamilton," he said, sliding a thick file across my desk. "Remember that financial fraud case out of Millbrook, the one that's been cold for 3 years?" I knew. Population 8,000, my hometown. The case he was referring to had made regional news. Someone had systematically drained multiple elderly residents' accounts through a sophisticated identity theft scheme. Over $2.3 million stolen across 4 years. The local police and state investigators had hit dead ends. "What about it?" I asked, though something cold was already settling in my stomach. "We caught a break. New evidence points to it being part of a larger operation. Wire fraud across state lines. Elderly exploitation. Money laundering. It's ours now." He tapped the file. "I'm putting you in charge. You know Theria, and this kind of financial investing is your specialty." I opened the file and saw the first suspect photo. My hands went completely listicle. Emma Hamilton, age 38. Miss High School senior, portrayed stared back at me from a federal wanted post to Hamilton. Thompson's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You all right?" I cleared my throat and closed the file. "Yes, sir. When do we off tomorrow? We've got warrants for 4 suspects, including this Emma Hamilton woman. She's apparently throwing leader. Real piece of work, according to the local reports. Been living in her parents' old house, playing the grieving daughter whose sister abandoned the family. Meanwhile, she's been bleeding the whole community. My parents' house. She was living in my parents' house." "Sir," I said carefully, "I should mention that I'm from Millbrook originally. I might know some of these people." Thompson nodded. "Even better. Local knowledge always helps. Just maintain objectivity. Yauk know the drill." That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the case file. Emma had outdone herself this time. This scheme was elegant in its cruelty. She befriended elderly residents, gained their trust, offered to help with their finances, and then systematically drained their accounts. When family members got suspicious, she'd produce fake documents showing the victims had loaned the money willingly or given it as gifts. The same skills she'd used to frame me now applied on an industrial scale. The worst part was reading the victim statements. Mrs. Chen from Theflo shop, who'd trusted Emma with her life savings. Mr. Rodriguez, Uidawa, who thought Emma was like a daughter to him. These weren't just numbers on a page. These were people I'd grown up around. People who'd watched me graduate high school. People who'd believed the lies about me because they trusted Emma. I barely slept that night. The next morning, our task force of 6 marshals and 2 FBI agents rolled into Millbrook in 3 black SUVs. I was wearing my standard duty gear. Tactical vest with U.S. Marshal emblem across the chest, badge clearly visible. Radio crackling with updates from the surveillance team. We'd been watching Ma's house, my parents' house. Since 4 a.m. she was home, along with 2 Alpha Co-conspirators. The plan was simple. Simultaneous arrest warrants at all 4 locations. Target 1, this is command, came the voice through my earpiece. You will go for entry. I took a deep breath and walked up the front steps I'd climbed thousands of times as a child. Iman's with the door in a silk robe, coffee cup in hand, looking like she'd just rolled out of bed. For a moment, she just stared at me blankly, not quite processing what she was seeing. Then recognition hit. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on their hardwood floor my father had installed when I was 16. Rachel, she whispered. Emma Hamilton, I said, my voice steady and official. You're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and money. You have the right to remain silent. She was still staring at me like I was a ghost. I'm what? Emma, a criminal, a disappointment, a failure. I kept reading her rights while other marshals moved past us in Teth House. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Rachel, I don't understand. How are you? What is this? I turned her around and cuffed her hands behind her back, the same way I'd been cuffed 8 years ago. This is the United States Marshal Service executing a federal warrant for your arrest. Do you understand this rights as I've read them to you? She was screaming now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Rachel, please. I can explain. I was young. I made mistakes. Single quotes I said, guiding her toward the COV. You can explain it to the federal prosecutor. The news traveled fast in Asmal Town. By noon, everyone in Millbrook knew that Emma Hamilton had been arrested by federal marshals, and one of those marshals was Rachel Hamilton, the sister everyone thought had disappeared in shame. My phone started ringing around 100 p.m. Mimitha. I almost didn't answer. Butite years of wondering, 8 years of carrying their disappointment and disgust made me pick up Rachel. Mum's voice was barely a whisper. Hello, Mum. Is it true about Emma? Yes. A long pause then. And you're really a federal marshal? Yes. I could hear her currying on the other end. Rachel, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Emma told us that I was a criminal, that I was too ashamed to face the family, that I'd probably changed my name and was living under a bridge somewhere. How long have you had this job? Since 6 months after Emma framed me. Turns out getting wrongful life fired from a bank is excellent motivation for a career in federal law enforcement. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, your father is in the hospital. Has been for 2 months. He's been asking about you. Something inside my chest cracked open. What's wrong with him? Heart failure. The doctors say it might not be much longer. I closed my eyes. Which is Pittle St. Mary's, room 314. But Rachel, he might not recognize you. I'll be there tonight. He drove to the hospital alone, still in military uniform. The nurses at their reception desk did double takes when they saw my badge and gear, but they directed me to the cardiac unit without questions. Room 314 was dimly lit. My father looked smaller than I remembered, connected to machines that beeped steadily in the quiet room. Mum was there, sitting in Acre beside his bed, looking older than her 68 years. She stood when I entered it, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she was hugging me, crying into my shoulder, and I realized I was crying too. I'm so sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry we believed her. I'm so sorry we didn't trust you. Dad stirred, opened his eyes, and looked at TME with confusion. Then something clicked in his expression. Rachel, his voice was hoarse. Hi, Dad. He tried to sit up straighter. Saw my uniform, my badge. Are you U.S. Marshal, Service Deputy Marshal Hamilton? He was quiet for a long time, just looking at me. Then he said, I was wrong about you. Your mother told me what happened today, what Emma did, what she'd been doing all these years. I sat down in the chair on the other side of his bed. Dad, no, let me say this. I called you at a deployment. I said you'd never amount to anything. I believed Lisa about you instead of trusting the daughter I'd raised. His eyes were bright with tears. But look at you. Look what you became. I became what I always was, Dad. You just couldn't see it. He reached for my hand with his free one, the one not connected to an IV. Can you all forgive a foolish old man? I squeezed his fingers. There's nothing to forgive. You believed what you were told. Emma was very convincing. She was living in your house, Mom said quietly, taking care of us, managing our finances. We thought she was being so generous, so responsible. We had no idea she was stealing from us, too. That was news, Tom, from you. The house is mortgaged, tough hilt. Our savings, our rest of it gone. She convinced her father to sign papers, told him it was for investments. We thought we were comfortable, but we have nothing left. The pieces clicked together. Emma hadn't just been stealing from she had been systematically laundering our parents' assets for years, playing the devoted daughter while rubbing them blind. Where will you go now? I asked. Mum looked at Dad, then back at me. We don't know. Emma was supposed to be taking care of everything. The house will be foreclosed on within the month. I thought about my condo in Alexandria, Virginia, 12 rooms, quiet neighborhood, close tough federal courthouse where I testified regularly. I thought about 8 years of missed birthdays, Christmas, mornings and Sunday dinners. I thought about the family I'd lost to Emma's lies, and the parents who were sitting in front of Menno, broken and ashamed. There's agrest room in my place, I said. It's not much, but it's yours if you want it. Mom started crying again. Rachel, we don't deserve. You're my parents. Despite everything, you're still my parents. Dad squeezed my hand tighter. What happens to Emma? She'll go to trial. Federal charges carry serious time. Probably 15 to 20 years if she's convicted on all counts. And you'll be involved in the case. I'm the lead investigator. I'll be the one building evidence, preparing witness testimony, working with the prosecutor. The irony was perfect. Emma had destroyed my life with false evidence and lies. Now I would be the one presenting the real evidence that would destroy hers. Dad was quiet for a moment. Then he said, she won't be able to lie her way out of this one, will she? No, Dad. Federal court doesn't work that way. We have forensic contents, digital evidence, paper trails that go back years. This isn't small-town gossip or forged bank statement. This is the United States government, and we don't make cases we can't win. 6 months later, I sat in federal district court watching Emma's defense attorney make his closing argument. He was good, expensive suit, silver tongue, trying to paint Emma as a misguided young woman who'd made push losses. But I had spent 6 months building an airtight case, financial UA codes, witness testimony, digital forensics, surveillance footage, Emma's own words recorded in phone calls, evidence filled for bankers' boxes, and painted a picture of calculated cruelty spanning nearly a decade. When it wastes time for the prosecution's closing, Assistant U.S. Attorney Morrison walked the jury through every piece of evidence sematically. Then he pointed to me in the gallery. Ladies and gentlemen, this case was investigated by Deputy U.S. Rachel Hamilton, a woman with 12 years of federal law enforcement experience and specialized training in financial crimes. Marshal Hamilton spent 6 months tracking down every lead, interviewing every witness, and following every money trail to bring youth complete picture of the defendant's crimes. Emma turned to look at me, then Rioli looked at me. For the first time since her arrest, I was wearing my Dryce uniform dark blue jacket with gold badge service ribbons, rank insignia. He looked back at her with the calm, professional expression I'd perfected over years of testifying in She looked away first. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. As the judge read the verdict, I watched Emma's shoulders shake with silent sobs. Her defense attorney put a comforting hand on her arm, but she was alone in the way only the guilty can be alone. When court adjourned, I walked over to where Mom and Dad were sitting. They'd been in the gallery every day after trial, watching their daughters on opposite sides of justice. How do you feel? Mum asked me quietly. I thought about it for a moment. Complete, I said, finally. That evening, we had dinner at a small restaurant near the courthouse. Dad was doing better. The stress of the financial situation had been making his heart condition worse, and knowing Emma was in custody had helped his recovery more than any medication. What happens now? He asked over coffee. Emma will be sentenced in 60 days. She's looking at 15 to 20 years in The restitution orders will help victims recover some of their money. But it won't be everything. And us, Mama asked, you'll testify at victim impact hearings if you want to. Tell the judge how her crimes affected you personally. It might help with sentencing. Dad shook his head. I don't think I want to do that. She's still my daughter despite everything. I understood. Even after everything Emma had done, the instinct to protect your child runs deep. It was why they'd believed Hurley's about me for so long. They'd wanted to believe that at least one of their daughters was doing well. There's something else, I said. The financier recovery team found accounts Emma had hidden, offshore banks, crypto property she'd purchased under shell companies, the government assessing all of it for victim restitution, but there should be enough left over to pay back most of what she stole from you. Mum's eyes widened. Really, you won't be rich, but you'll be comfortable. You'll be able to afford a small place of your own if that's what you want. They looked at each other, then back at me. Actually, Dad said, we've been talking. If the offer is still open, we'd like to stay with you a little longer. We've missed too many years already. I smiled, really smiled. For the first time the offer's permanent. 3 months later, I was in my office reviewing case files when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Deputy Hamilton. This is Warden Collins from FCI Hazleton. I have an inmate here who's been requesting to speak with you. Emma Hamilton. My pen stopped moving across the page. What does she want? She says she needs to tell you something important. Something about why she really did watch it 8 years ago. I was quiet for a moment. Emma had been sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. She was 3 months into her sentence, and this was the first time she'd tried to contact me. Did she say what it was about? No, ma'am. Just said it was important. Said she needed you to understand. I could have said no, could have hung up, and never looked back. Emma had taken 8 years of my life, had destroyed my relationships with my parents, had stolen from dozens of innocent people. I owed her nothing, but I was curious. After everything, I needed to know why. Be there tomorrow, I said. The Federal Correctional Institution at Hazleton was a 3-hour drive from my office. I made the trip in my personnel car, not wanting to arrive in an official capacity. This conversation was personal. Emma looked different in her prison uniform, smaller, her hair was shorter, no makeup, none of their carefully cultivated appearance she'd maintained for years. When she saw me cross the visiting room table, her eyes with tears immediately. Thank you for coming, she said. You have 10 minutes. What do you want to tell me? She took a shaky breath. I need you to talk now. Why I did it. Why I framed you. Money. Greed. Same reason you stole from me very on. Else no. She looked up at Methan and I saw something I'd never seen in Emma's eyes before. Genuine shame. I was pregnant. That stopped me cold. What, 8 years ago when I set you up AF Bank, I was pregnant and the father was married. He was important in town. Respected. He said if anyone found out, he'd destroy me. Make sure I never worked anywhere again. The piece started clicking together in my mind. Who? David Morrison. Assistant District Attorney David Morrison. Married to the bank president's daughter. Father op3, pillar of the community. He said he'd pay for an abortion, but I had to make sure no one ever connected us. The problem was I'd been embezzling small amounts from the bank to pay my credit cards. Nothing major, maybe 3,000 over 6 months. But you were starting to notice discrepancies in the accounts I managed. I remembered. I'd been preparing a report about irregularities in several customer accounts. Nothing that pointed to Emma specifically, but patterns that would have led to an investigation. So, you framed me to cover your theft. David said he'd handle everything if he could redirect suspicion away from himself. He had contacts in the bank, people who owed him favors. All I had to do was create documents that pointed to you instead of me. The elegant cruelty of it hit me all at once. Emma hadn't just been covering a small embezzlement. She'd been protecting David Morrison's reputation and her own secret. By destroying me, she'd save them both. What happened to the baby? I miscarried 3 weeks after you were arrested. She was crying openly now. I lost everything. The baby. David cut all contact, and he still had to live with what I'd done to you, but I couldn't take it back. Too many people knew the story. If I admitted I lied, David would have destroyed me anyway. So, you decided to destroy other people instead. I didn't plan it. It just happened. Mrs. Chen asked me to help her with her finances after her husband did. She trusted me. It was so easy to just take a little bit. Then Mr. Rodriguez needed help with his investments. Then the Johnsons wanted someone to manage their retirement accounts. She wiped her eyes with the back of her asterisk hand. Before I knew it, I was in too deep to stop. I sat back in my chair, processing everything she'd told me. Why tell me this now? Because I need you talk no. That framing you was never about you. You were in the way. And I need you to know that watching you in that courtroom, seeing what you became, seeing the respect people have furred you, I know I destroyed the wrong person 8 years ago. You destroyed Everine, Emma, me, our parents, Mrs. Chen, Mr. Rodriguez. I know, but you survived it. You became something better. I just kept getting worse. We sat in silence for a minute. Then I asked, is David Morrison the reason you targeted elderly victims specifically? She nodded. He said elderly people with no family were less likely to report crimes, and if they did, people would assume it was confusion or dementia. Another piece clicked into place. David Morrison, Assistant District Attorney, the man Wow would have been prosecuting financial crimes in our county, the man who would have known exactly how to avoid. Emma, I said carefully, how long did your relationship with David Morrison continue? Until about 3 years ago. He'd come by the house when Mum and Dad weren't home. Said he was checking on me, making sure I was staying clean. But really, he was monitoring what I was doing, making sure I never talked. Was he getting money from your shms? She hesitated, then nodded. 20%. He said it was insurance to keep him quiet, but also he gave me advice on which victims to target, the thefts to avoid. I felt a cold anger settling in my stomach. David Morrison hadn't just enabled Emma's original crime against me. He'd been an active participant in victimizing dozens of innocent people for years. Emma, I need you to write down everything you do. Me, every detail about David Morrison's involvement, dates, amounts, conversations, everything. Will it help me sentence? It might, but more importantly, it'll help us make sure he pays for what he did. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, Rachel, do you think you can ever forgive? I looked at my sister, really looked at her for the first time in 8 years. She looked broken, worn down by years of flies, and crime, and guilt. Part of me wanted to hate her forever. Part of me did hate her. But sitting in that prison visiting room, I realized something. My anger at Emma had been fuel for 8 years. It had driven me to excel, to prove wrong, to become someone he could be proud of. In a twisted way, Emma's betrayal had given me the life I was meant to have. I forgive you, Emma, I said finally, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let it go. 6 months later, I was back in federal court, but this time I was sitting at the prosecutor's table. David Morrison sat across the courtroom in handcuffs, his expensive suit replaced with an arranged jumpsuit. His wife and children sat in the gallery, their faces a mixture of shock and humiliation. The case against Morrison was even stronger than the one against Emma. His degree and position of trust made his crimes more egregious in the eyes of the law. Plus, Emma's cooperation had given us a roadmap to bank accounts, real estate investments, and other assets Morrison had purchased with stolen money. When the judge sentenced Doom to 25 years in federal prison, I felt a satisfaction deeper than anything did experienced in Emma's trial. Morrison was the puppet master who'd orchestrated not just the crimes against elderly victims, but my own destruction. 8 years earlier, as court adjourned, Morrison's wife approached me in the hallway. You know this will destroy my children, too, she said, tears streaming down her face. They didn't do anything wrong. I looked at her with the same steady expression. I'd given Emma. Neither did I. Mrs. Morrison. Neither did I. That evening, I drove to the cemetery where my parents had bought their plots years earlier. Dad had passed away 6 months after Emma's sentencing, peacefully in his sleep, with Mum and me holding his hands. The heart condition that had been by years of financial stress and worry had finally claimed him, but not before he'd gotten to see Sidon and his family reunited. I sat by his grave in my dress uniform, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the headstone. We got them, Dad, I said quietly. We got them on who started it all. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment he could almost hear his voice. I'm proud of you, Rachel. I'm so proud of what you became. I stood up, straightened my jacket, walked back to my car. Mum was making dinner, and I'd promised to help her with her physical therapy. Tomorrow, I had 3 new cases to review, testimony to prepare for, 2 ongoing trials, and a task force meeting about a multi-state fraud investigation. I had work to do. Good work, important work. and for the first time in 8 years, I was exactly where I